In the 1960s, Nobel Prize-winning economist Simon Kuznets described society as consisting of consumers, savers, and producers. Any society is able to consume, save, and produce in a sustainable way if the population structure represents more or less a pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid, there are the youngest people, up to the age of 20 or so. Then above them are the working population, who are producing, consuming, and saving. And then at the top are the older people, retirees for instance. Now we are observing a global increase in the aging population due to a decline in fertility and mortality rates. The pyramid is being reversed. And our research looks at what implications this has for all of us. We first show empirically that aging population structure leads to a decline in the long-term growth of the economy, investment, hours worked, real interest rates, and innovation rate. Using United Nations population data and predictions, our conditional predictions show that unless drastic changes occur in the demographic structure, these long-term downward trends will continue. We provide two theoretical channels to explain the data and our estimates. First, when people expect to live longer, they need to save more for their retirement and consume less. This increases their demand for assets and, in turn, decline in asset returns. Thus, we can explain the decline in the long-term growth and the real interest rates. But this leaves us with a puzzle. If long-term interest rates decrease, long-term investment should increase, and that's not what we observe in our estimates. Long-term investment is actually declining. Our resolution to the puzzle is related to the production process. Remember that we found that the long-term innovation declines as the population is aging. That means the population aging affects ideas production. With fewer younger people in the population, there will be less creativity and ideas. Thus, while the cost of investment finance may be lower due to higher savings of the aging populations, there are simply not enough good ideas worth capitalizing on, and so long-term investment must be declining. Are there solutions to the aging population problem? Migration may address the shortage of younger people. Or giving more support for young parents could help increase fertility rates. Or increasing funding of research and development will bolster the flagging generation of new ideas and see more innovations and investment opportunities. And finally, new advances in artificial intelligence and robotics could be used to fill gaps in the workforce. Overall, perhaps we need to think more about living more sustainably and plan for a future where we are demanding less from our planet and her resources.
Ladies and gentlemen, today human beings live longer than ever. Globally, the population of older persons is growing faster than all younger age groups. Europe experienced population aging sooner than many other parts of the world, and European countries are pioneering innovative policy responses to meet the challenges ahead. The United Nations Economic Commission for Europe's Working Group on Aging fosters regional cooperation and helps countries find solutions. We can all draw inspiration from the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging. As you recommit to this important plan and set the policy agenda for the coming years, I encourage you to be ambitious. Address the challenges of longevity and unleash its potentials. Lifelong learning, health, and intergenerational support are crucial. This will help people live active, productive, and fulfilling lives, and that will help build a sustainable future for all. Thank you. Obrigado.
Dear colleagues and friends, humans are living longer than ever, but adding more years to life can be a mixed blessing if it's not accompanied by adding more life to years. Many older people are very active. All of them have plenty of experience and they are a valuable resource for our societies. Yet, at least 142 million older people globally are unable to meet their basic daily needs. Just this week, The United Nations General Assembly endorsed the UN Decade of Healthy Aging 2021 to 2030. Our vision is a world in which people at older ages can live fulfilling lives with the abilities to do and be what they value. When you start on a journey, it's important to know where you're starting from. That's why this baseline report for the Decade of Healthy Aging is so important. It shows us how much and how little we know about the lives of older persons. It also shares experiences from around the world on what we can do together with older people. WHO is committed to working with all partners for a world in which all people live long and healthy lives.
The world is getting older. How much older? By 2050, the number of people over 65 will triple. A new aging attitude survey of 21 countries by the Pew Research Center found that Japan is the most worried about aging. 87% of people think it's a problem. That's in contrast to the US, where only 26% of people are concerned. The survey found that the older the population is predicted to be, the more they're worried about aging. Countries also have different takes on who should care for the old. Only a few have a big chunk of people who think seniors should care for themselves. Overall, most people think the government should be responsible. But also look at a place like Pakistan, where 77% of folks think it's up to families. All this aging can hurt economies. Spain's a good example. In the future, there will be more people, younger and older, relying on those of working age. The US, however, may have an advantage here. Its population is growing slower and getting older, but it's still projected to be younger than major trading partners in Europe and Asia. That's because America has the most immigrants of any country. They're bringing higher fertility rates, even as US-born women are having less babies. Between 1960 and 2005, immigrants and their descendants accounted for 51% of US population growth. Now, between 2005 and 2050, they'll account for 82% of that growth. Pew says countries with the biggest chances of economic boosts may be those with the youngest populations. Among these, Nigeria is well placed. By 2050, it's projected to have a bigger population than the United States. David Botti, BBC News, Washington.
Increased longevity is one of humanity's major achievements. In recent decades, developing and developed countries such as China and Japan have seen a 15 to 20-year increase in life expectancy, while least developed countries such as Nepal have seen a 20 to 30-year increase. Today, 12% of the population in the Asia Pacific is aged 60 or over. By 2050, that figure will have more than doubled. By then, 1 in 4 people in the region will be aged 60 or over, and 1 in 5 aged 80 or over. Decreasing fertility rates will mean that there will be fewer younger people to support them. It is now more important than ever to appreciate the role older persons are playing in shaping our families, our societies, and our economies. We must ensure that older persons are able to live a life of dignity.
Rapid population aging in Asia and the Pacific is a tremendous challenge for our region. Helping overcome it in a way that supports sustainable development is an important part of ESCAP's agenda. Since adopting the Madrid International Plan of Action in 2002, ESCAP members have made remarkable progress. Social protection has been strengthened and policies to protect older persons' rights have been introduced. But addressing population aging requires adopting far more forward-looking policies at a global, regional and local level. How economies and societies are run needs to be fundamentally adjusted to make them more inclusive across generations. Put simply, the contribution older persons can make to development and economic growth needs to be better recognized in policy. And we need stronger partnerships and more effective collaboration to quicken the pace of implementation of the Madrid Plan of Action on Aging. Only then can we hope to achieve the 2030 Agenda's Sustainable Development Goals.
Now, old people, they're everywhere. You must have noticed, but this is not a uniquely British problem, if it's a problem at all. The United Nations says the number of old people in the world is growing faster than any other section of the population. Admittedly, absurdly, they define the old as those over 60. There will be over 1 billion within a decade. Watch out. Joe Lynham reports.
In a rapidly developing world, the once yawning gap between the developed and developing worlds is closing. Where the old challenges were to simply survive childhood, the new 21st century challenge is how to manage old age. The UN Population Fund and Help Age International welcomed the fact that people are living longer, but said that developing countries had to urgently think up new approaches to healthcare, retirement and intergenerational relations. According to the report, rapidly changing demographics make the case for urgent action. A decade from now, in 2022, there will be 1 billion over 60-year-olds. And by 2050, that figure will have reached 2 billion, when for the first time there will be more people over 60 than under 15. In fact, older people, as defined by the UN, are the fastest growing age group of all. The report also dispels the myth that longevity is merely an economic problem in wealthy countries. In many less well-off cultures, young people are brought up knowing that it is their role to provide for older family members. But because that's not the case in developed countries, the state tends to have a bigger role in taking care of the old. This UN report says that less well-off countries are sleepwalking into a problem because as they get richer, they are not making sufficient provision for older people in the future.
There are a few things that we can do to minimize that problem, not to solve it, but to minimize. One of them is to raise the retirement age, which in Brazil is very low. Many people in private and public sector retire very early. So we can definitely, through public policy, minimize part of the effect of population aging.
Half of those countries where there are at least 10 million over 60-year-olds are in developing economies. In China, the world's most rapidly growing large economy, the one-child policy makes the problem of longevity even more acute and means that the country will be old before it's rich. China's fertility rate stands at 1.6 births per woman, far below the 2.1 needed to sustain a growing population. The report makes a number of key recommendations. Older people shouldn't be forced to retire by a certain age if they wish to work longer. Britain ended that practice this year. National healthcare plans should automatically include special provision for the needs of older people. Young people should be educated in such a way as to make them less economically dependent when they get older. And the UN also suggests that older people's rights should be enshrined in law to protect them from discrimination. South Africa is developing rapidly and has a young population coming through the ranks. But it's also been dealing with the effect of HIV/AIDS, which has devastated many parts of the country. That has thrown up further problems and even a grim advantage.
We've called it a kind of demographic dividend that we are reaping at the moment, in the sense that there was quite a dramatic decrease in life expectancy as a direct consequence of HIV/AIDS, and subsequently with the sort of rollout of antiretrovirals on a fairly widespread basis, we're seeing quite a substantial recovery in life expectancy generally.
Global prosperity means we're having fewer children and they are living longer. Soon there'll be more dependents than people actually working. The message from the UN for all of us is ignore our population growth today and you'll be storing up economic problems tomorrow.